All right, I can't help myself. I'm rocking out, but I'm having all these thoughts. And I'm like, man, this is good stuff. The Muse is present. 9:12 a.m., Sunday the 12th of April, 2026. And I'm heading out to Devil's Backbone, walking back towards the Blue Ridge Parkway right now, which I will cross over. And then I'll actually be approaching Waynesboro from the west. Well, the south? Seems almost like more so the south. Well, it's hard to say. A lot of these towns off the Appalachian Trail, it's kind of hard to determine their bearings for me because, Appalachian Trail is supposed to be a northbound hike, and over the course of a long enough line, it certainly does something like imitate a northern trajectory, but it's really more northeasterly, if anything. And yeah, it's hard for me to geolocate the adjoining towns because I'm like, well, I don't know. At any given time, honestly, the Appalachian Trail has even gone south at points. I think it's where are all these cars coming from? The Appalachian Trail going up by Standing Indian. There's this really bizarre C shape that the trail suddenly takes on, and there is literally a point on that little diversion. It's not even a diversion, it's the official trail. There's a point where you're actually going south in order to go north. I don't remember who originally told me that. Someone surely I met as a thru hiker, because what further insult to the injury of the trail than to literally make it occasionally backtrack on itself for no discernible reason. Anyway, I was just thinking, I'm out here. I really didn't do yesterday justice because some interesting things happened. And the thought that I was having that really made me pull out the recorder, I was reflecting again on my organismic being, the protest that I felt yesterday. And it's interesting, I was kind of analyzing in my head my own emotional state, right? And I was like, this is probably, to this point in my life, this is probably about as upset as I ever get. Which is, that's a blessing, my dude. It's just it's almost like, when I was sick recently, when I feel like I get upset, it feels oh so similar to just that strange stomach cramp that I felt that didn't feel normal and felt like something consequential was going to happen because of it. Ended up getting sick as a dog. And then yesterday I had that creeping sensation that something was just terribly, terribly wrong. And, again, I mentioned, last time I did the Appalachian Trail, in 2022, I was on the trail, 95% of the time. And when I finally got to Rangeley, Maine, I was like, dude, I cannot do this anymore. I was getting so mad. If I had the vocabulary back then, I certainly could have understood what I was going through better. But in any case, yeah, I just remember how hot that was, how miserable that was, and how continuous it was. I did, to the greatest degree of my ability, I did confirm that summer was, to my satisfaction. I have a memory, I don't know if this is even true, I have a memory of looking through a farmer's almanac in 2022, or something like that. Maybe not a farmer's almanac, because I don't even know how those things work. I think that they're more predictive, and I don't even know, dude. I've never read one. I've only looked at stuff. But yeah, the summer of 2022 in the New England area it was exceptionally dry, and because of that, hot. You know, it was just like exposure all day long to the sun. You know, got these beautiful trees, these living sticks right next to me, and you know, as the sun makes its arc in the sky, there's a point that lasts for several hours where the trees do not give me shade because of my direction of travel, you know. And I remember feeling very upset many times. It's all documented. I remember having a panic attack so bad on the trail one day that I saw a hotel in the distance. I was like, well, okay, I can hold it together and get to this hotel. You know, the thing that I wanted to do so badly was just stop, but stopping was the enemy, because then I'm stuck in the heat. I see this hotel and I start walking to it, and it's like, it's off of an exit ramp, and I have to like, basically, if I keep following this exit ramp, I'm gonna have to backtrack like a hairpin turnstile to get to this exact same location where I can see that I can get to the hotel faster. And so I cut across the grass, and there was this fence that I had to climb, and I was like, oh my God. If there was a moment where I might have been closest to tears, it could have been that. And I was just like, dude, pardon my French, but forget this fence. Like, I can't stop or go back, because like I'm in a state of panic and I can only go forward. So I climbed this crazy fence. I can't remember if I did it with my backpack or not with my backpack. But as I was doing this, I got bit on my arm by this really weird looking beetle, you know? Like, it was huge in my memory, like over an inch long. And so, you know, I feel like I'm freaking out, and I just get bit by this foreign bug. I have no idea if I'm about to have like an allergic reaction, which would actually push this from like a pseudo panic into a real possible crisis, you know? And so now I'm worrying double time. The floodgates of my amygdala, it's just, you know, it's laid bare. There's no bars are held, my dude. And so everything ends up being fine, because of course most of the time that's the way it goes. Went to this hotel, drank a lot of water, took a shower, monitored my bug bite, and as per usual, nothing happened. But again, fledgling understanding of my own inner world as I had in 2022, which is ironic, because that just shows that it really took about 4 years for me to internalize the information that I was taking in through Carl Rogers and the Organismic Being. First time I ever listened to that book was on trail in 2022. And even then I was like, wow, this is so dense, but it's so good. Like, I understand this on like a very intuitive level. Like, I feel like Carl Rogers is speaking directly to the kind of person that I happen to be, you know? Maybe not all the time, but certainly more so than like the average thing that I listen to, because I think it might be interesting. Like, this feels like, in so much as human beings can still transmit secrets to one another, or like, magic, I guess, is probably a good word for it. Like, I felt like I was given this thing that had no material component to it, just ideas. And I could use these ideas with my own mindset and framing, and like basically conduct experiments, or maybe new variables. Is calling something a variable the more modern way to describe magic, perhaps. But yeah, you know, yesterday I felt that intense sensation of dissatisfaction and a need to admit that the plan needed to change, you know? And again, I feel like that's about as upset as I ever get these days. And like the thing about my process, at least to this point, is that like as soon as that alarm bell goes off, it kind of, I don't know how this happens, but this is my sense of it. Alarm bell goes off, rational mind recognizes this feeling for exactly what it is, which is like, hey, you're about to become emotionally deregulated if you continue to make yourself feel this way without doing something about it. Like if I continue to put my body and my whole being into this specific environment, this feeling that is extremely unpleasant to carry, it will continue, it will happen again. This is a warning. Like you have reached a certain limit of like where enjoyment, you've actually found where the enjoyment ends. You have found your visceral speedometer for when pleasure plummets to a suffering that no longer feels productive, you know? Like, that's really what it is. It's like in operation, you know? You can't touch the sides. You get a buzz. That's the limit. That's the literal border of like what I, at this point, am willing to endure. And that's interesting to me because, again, rational mind, like, understands that this is what that sensation means. I've mapped it, you know, in my intellectual and emotional experience. Like, I know what this sensation means. It's so, I've tagged it, you know. It's like, it came out once before. It's recognizable, but, you know, it's not super often it makes an appearance. Again, you have to hit some kind of a limit or a boundary for it to even appear. But, like, I recognize it, you know. It feels like a klaxon, you know, like a warning bell, like a lighthouse or something, you know. You only see it when you need it. It's not like hunger or thirst. It's a different kind of, it's a different layer, a different level of like all of the feedback loops that are going on within the human body. I suppose it's the subconscious crying out to the conscious to say, hey, like, you're not the only one who doesn't like this. You know, reporting back from my body. It's like, hey, this sucks. Like, it doesn't feel dangerous, but it surely doesn't feel fun. Like, and it's unfortunate, you know. I was like, you know, if I could just have those hours between like 7 and 8 last all day, completely different story, you know. But and today's supposed to be cloudy, but the sun's starting to peek out a little bit, so it's got me nervous. But you know, things are going to only get hotter. Again, I've played this game before, and I had some diminishing returns towards the end, you know. Road walking is way better if you have like a pretty firm idea. Well, it's not even true, actually. I was going to say, I'm trying to get my hood out, so losing the thread, multitasking. But anyway, yeah, that was the thing that made me take my recorder out, because I was like, I'd love to hear what Notebook LM had to say about this. You know? So let me try to actually recount my day yesterday, since I did a very bad job, and then also ended up talking to somebody else about stuff that had nothing to do with what I was doing. But yeah, yesterday, well, I guess I made the clip in the morning, so I can start, I guess, yeah, I continued on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I was looking for a certain road, and I incorrectly assumed that it would be marked, and so I didn't find it, and I missed it. Thankfully, there was another way to get generally over to the road that I needed to go to without having to do like a miserable amount of backtracking. And it was somewhat fortuitous anyway. I ended up walking by this camp store at about 10:30, so I was about 8 miles into the day or so, and I was feeling good, and came to this camp store that I had no idea was there, and they had water, bathrooms, food, all this great stuff, and I was like, oh my God, I feel so blessed. I thought I was going to have to drink cow runoff again, because I didn't really know what water sources would be available. And honestly, there weren't actually any water sources like from a gas station or anything like that for the rest of the day, but we'll get to that. So, I was walking down this road, went to that camp store, which I just loved, charged my phone up to 100, did a bunch of needfuls, got to have a nice cup of coffee, which is always a treat, and by nice cup I just mean a Keurig. But then I was full, I was ready to go, rehydrated, all that kind of stuff. It was interesting watching the people. This camp store was abutted by like stocked trout ponds, and there were a ton of people out doing it. I thought it was cute, I was like, I'm glad that someone does this. I've literally, I think I can make this statement definitively. I have never woken up in my entire life and thought, I want to go trout fishing in a stocked pond, it's never even occurred to me. If you came up to me and you're like, hey, I have this idea for a business. I'm going to dig a hole in the ground, fill it with water, and then put fish in there for people to come catch. I'd be like, dude, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Respectfully. I'm not gonna, good luck. But, my experience in that respect is so narrow that I assume that there is zero market for it. But obviously there is. And so it was fun to watch, especially because all these people were just standing in the sun. And I was like, how are you not furious? You're making me mad. The sun, to me, it's like watching someone just be in the sun, unprotected, direct exposure. I feel like it's like going into a medieval jousting thing with no shield. I'm just like, you have no protection. Do you realize how vulnerable you are? It's just so funny to me to think about how much that gets my goat, because, that's if you had a microchip plugged into a board that was actively working with the system, the computer's on doing tasks, that microchip would get warm. And if you had the same microchip that was just in a bag, not in a computer, and they were right next to each other, and I was that microchip that was hot, looking at the one that's not actually in a computer and being like, how are you not furious? They're making us work too hard. I'm really hot. The cooling is not sufficient, but it's possible for both of those states to exist at the same time in different embodiments. So, just fun to watch. Talked to a few people, was generally pleased to be there. It was still only 10:30 in the morning, so it wasn't even really that hot yet. I didn't even know what I was up against. And then I kept walking, and yesterday was generally just a lot longer than I thought it would be. I anticipated 24 miles, and by the time I actually got to my tent and stopped Strava for the final time, I had walked 29 miles yesterday. Some around the camp, doing this and that, whatever. If I have my druthers, I like to keep Strava going until I'm decidedly no longer accruing meaningful distance. So basically just right when I get in my tent. But 29 miles, so, I did 7 more than I thought I was supposed to without realizing how that happened. I thought I mapped it out. I guess I didn't. Proof's in the pudding. I know what I walked yesterday, and there was no shorter way to get here. So, damn near a 30-mile day. Anyway, I'm getting lost in reverie. So, there was this point, again, the day feeling like it's dragging, 27 or 17 miles in or so. I was like, dang, well, I think to myself, I only have like 5 more miles. I can go, like, next time I see a suitable place to stop, I'm gonna have a break. And I passed this church, and they had a nice outdoor pavilion with picnic tables. And I was like, dude, that is the spot. Like, it was a little before I was actually gonna start looking for somewhere to rest. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, there's no way anything gets better than this. Like, the only thing I can imagine would be finding a place exactly like this where someone forgot like $500,000 or something like that, Like, it's hard to sweeten the deal further. So, go to this church, family shows up, play on the playground a little bit. I'm listening to my own stuff, trying to give them space because, like, I don't want to make them scared. I don't want them to feel like they need to call the police because I'm there. And I was there first. I did actually have that thought, and I was like, that's so immature, shut up. Anyway, get to this church, and I'm looking for an outdoor spigot, and it's pretty much in the middle of nowhere, this church. So while I'm going around the church, I'm also looking for like doors. And so I open this back door, which is unlocked, and it goes directly into this kitchen area. And I was like, dude, you can't even make this stuff up, because I'm like super thirsty, obviously. And I open this door, and there's like 24 pristine water bottles. I did have a moment, because there was so much water on the kitchen table, that I thought maybe something was wrong with the tap. Like, I have been to churches before, somewhere in Maine. It's only happened once, but that's the human brain for you, where the entire church, the entire town was experiencing water issues. And it was crazy because I had just gone up to this church, and I don't even remember the sequence of events, but I filled up my bottle in an outdoor spigot. Maybe it looked weird. Maybe it smelled bad. I remember shortly thereafter striking up a conversation with a local, and they're like, oh yeah, you shouldn't drink that water. And I was like, dang, and so anyway, remembering that one single instance where my brain decided we should count this as happening 100 times. So I was thinking about that, and so I got 4 water bottles. So I was like, dude, I'm not in the mood today to get sick. Like respectfully, that just can't happen. That can't be a part of the equation. So I got 4 water bottles, and then went outside, had a nice lunch, cooled down for about an hour, let all my stuff kind of dry out, took my shoes off, put everything in the sun so it would bake off all the nastiness, and it was a good break. I thought that I was so close, and I didn't have service all day, but I thought I was so close that, like, I needed to kill time. But in any case, yeah, that was great, and I did leave $3 in the kitchen for the water bottles that I took. I figured 50 cents a bottle is reasonable, because the pack probably only costs like $6 at the most. It was just generic water. I paid for the amount that I took with a huge markup, and then also $1 charitable donation. Thanks for being here. I think for all intents and purposes, if you were to divide this property up into however many people have ever used it, and then you assign them a ratio of its worth, I think I spent $1's worth and spent it well, you know. It was good. And yeah, from there, I just walked on. I mentioned yesterday, I guess it was more so front of mind in my agitable state. But yeah, it was like all of the elevation was right at the end of the day. And I was just like, damn. Like, it wasn't hard, but the conditions were just so crappy. Like, I could just feel the sun on the back of my head through my sun hoodie, just like making this little microclimate in the hoodie itself. And it was just so hot. And I was like, this sucks, dude. Cue the klaxon. You know, it's funny because these conditions, they're very insidious, you know. Like, I remember doing the Florida Trail and hiking through Key West, which that was a bit of a fiasco too. But doing the 7-mile bridge, and then, you know, it's winter. It's like the first week of January when I'm doing this. And so, you know, it's like, if anything, maybe a little chilly in the morning, 50s, you know, and then, you know, goes up to like a respectable 75 degrees. Like, generally speaking, especially with the ocean breeze, like, it feels comfortable and it doesn't feel like you're being sunburnt, but you are. And yeah, both my hiking partner Allie, shout out to Allie, and hey, for good measure, shout out to my parents. You know, like, I think we both got some of the worst sunburn of our life on that bridge, just because, you know, the conditions were so seemingly innocuous. But yeah, yesterday, not so much. It was like, it felt like full-fledged anti-innocuality. And, you know, it's only in the 70s. And I'm just like, dude, I really don't want to get hotter than this. Like, you know, I can't keep my cool when I'm this hot. This is what starts causing me to feel like weird when I go into town and have to take these moments of like solitary recovery, drinking a ton of things, ensuring that this is just panic because of the way I feel and not me feeling as bad as I think I'm panicking over, you know? And so, yes, got to Devil's Backbone, and then, you know, got my beers. Derek ended up taking me over to the shanty, and we talked for a little bit. He's a great guy. I enjoyed his company. You know, I wasn't feeling particularly talkative. It was kind of hard enough for me to even talk to myself and feel like I was making sense or saying things the way that they should be said. Listen to that eloquence. But yeah, he invited me to go somewhere else, and I was like, dude, respectfully, like, I don't want to go anywhere. Like, I barely even wanted to come here. You know, I say that humorously. And I'm not trying to extend this night at all, whatsoever. I don't want to have any ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, you know, he was like, no, it's just up the road, and I know I'm coming right back here after I'm done, and, you know, I'm not trying to hit on you. And I was like, that has nothing to do with that, my dude. Like, you know, I don't care if you are trying to hit on me. Like, first of all, barking up the wrong tree, but hey, don't we all? Like, you know, like, I just, if I'm going to be happy, I can't go anywhere. So let me just spare you that daydream, my dude. So I did not say with all those words, but I was pretty firm. And then at a certain point, he said the word entree, and I was like, speaking of entrees, I'm gonna go back to that restaurant and I'm gonna eat some food. But it was great talking to you. You know, I don't know how much I would have been able to say if I stayed. Like, I kind of felt like the conversation, and I mean this respectfully, it could be more of an indication of where I was at, but it seemed like my conversation partner wanted to talk more than he wanted to converse, respectfully. That's fine. Hey, we all get in moods like that. It's not a problem. Caveats noted. And so yeah, I went back to the restaurant, got some French fries and a hamburger. I wasn't super pleased. I was just like, I don't know, it's like the best thing on the menu, I guess. It's funny. It's a lot of times Notebook LM will talk about this concept of hedonic adaptation, and this isn't that, but I just think it's an interesting concept. I've heard about it from Andrew Huberman as well. He likes to talk about the hedonic treadmill, and hedonism. It's like the pursuit of pleasure, and so hedonic adaptation is like basically just when you get used to a certain type of pleasure, and yesterday I guess I got used to a certain kind of misery, and I was just like, well, yeah, dude, like I just need to go eat some food, drink some water, and go to bed, which I did. I was in bed before 9:30, hopefully even before that, I can't remember. Turned on my Harmontown, had a couple of chuckles, then fell asleep. Got up this morning around, 6, and I was like, all right, like I got that puffy eye feeling this morning, which happens pretty regularly out here. Like, I don't know what that's about, but I feel good enough to get up. And I was like, Devil's Backbone, they do a hiker breakfast, but it didn't start until 9:30. And I was like, dude, I'm not waiting around. I mean, it's 9:44 now, and I'm already, probably close to 3 miles in for the day. So getting close to quarter of the way there already. And if I had stayed for breakfast, I would only now be eating, and I would be that many miles behind. Pretty basic stuff, but calculated risk. Left at around, I don't even know, maybe I got on the road at 8 and went back to the gas station hoping that they would have some kind of breakfast thing that I could cobble together, and it worked out even better than I could have hoped, honestly. The gas station opened at 8, and it was 8:05 when I got there, so I guess I left before 8 o'clock because it was a mile just to get there. Anyway, they were brewing fresh coffee. She was making breakfast biscuits, fresh, or at least warming them up, which that counts. And yeah, I just hung out there for a good while. I couldn't find where there was potable water at Devil's Backbone. I wasn't really looking, but a bit of an oversight for me to go to bed after a pretty salty meal without having enough water to drink when I inevitably wake up again. I think my puffy eyes have something to do with that, like excessive sweating, and then also maybe excessive salt loss or salt intake. I don't even know. But in any case, yeah, it was a great breakfast. Met some dude who said that he wants to do the Appalachian Trail before he's 40. I didn't have the heart to tell him that he's actually seeing me the day after I decided to quit. I was like, yeah, I'll keep that part to myself, and otherwise just be very excited for this dude. And so, nice little way to start the day. And then I started walking and listening to music, and then here we are. And I can't remember, it's probably 1,500 feet at least, I'd imagine, for me to get all the way back up here. I got to cross the Blue Ridge Parkway, and then it's probably mostly downhill from there, but it doesn't really matter. It is what it is. And I'll be out here until I'm done. So, yeah, that was basically all of the technical stuff that happened yesterday that I wasn't able to include for reasons. Let me pull over here for just a second. All right, much better. It's funny, that little pit stop, I put my trekking poles into the ground, and then, as often happens, one of them fell over, and it almost went down this really, really steep embankment. And I was like, figures. Looking for signs, my dude. That counts, A near miss, Count your blessings. Let's see. Oh, there's some pretty decent water up here. Yeah, I have a few list items. Is it just me, or does the traffic seem like it's getting heavier? 10 o'clock. It's time for breakfast for the great hungover. Just the great hungover. All the people who were living it up on Saturday and then now have to pay the piper for their indulgences. Anyway, let's see. I know my list items, when I wrote them, I was very intrigued by the idea of talking about them later. So let's see if that same level of enthusiasm still exists. Let's see. Okay. Okay. I think at a certain point yesterday, I was kind of wondering to myself, because I was thinking about more of how there's a lot of certain type of self-reliance you can cultivate out here yesterday, And I think that when people, strangers, show interest and admiration and praise for these kinds of activities, the thing that they're really actually applauding is the idea of a human being not needing help from society. I think that that's a deeply ingrained, at least in our culture, the idea of the rugged individual who, doesn't need anything and can, keep living under their own power. We've, romanticized that. I assume if I was a Chinese person, that would they'd probably look at me very differently. Probably very disapprovingly. Maybe, I don't know anything about modern Chinese culture. It might be way more westernized than I'm thinking. But, doesn't make it a fictitious country. Let's call it Chuka. If Chuka was a collectivistic country and values and morals were based on doing what's best for the group, despite yourself, maybe sometimes in spite of yourself, maybe being a thru hiker would actually be something that society shunned, and they'd think that you were a bad person. So it probably is culturally bound, as I think about it. And but yeah, doing something like this is the embodiment of that great American explorationary feeling in fiction, And I just thought that was interesting because, man, all this brake smell of brakes is not one that I like. Being the beneficiary of a certain type of reverence because of a societal fiction. It's kind of cool, but it is a romantic notion, Let's see. Nature is the romanticism of the desire for self-reliance, which is why people always admire these projects. Yeah, for what it's worth, I do think that's true. People, I don't think that, well, I think we take for granted how much of a metaphorical lens we actually cast onto reality, you know? Like, I don't know, you know, like, there is no physical embodiment of most of, like, what humans would say we value, you know? Love, courage, honor, duty. Like, these things are not real things, you know? You can't put them in a box. You can't find them with a telescope. Like, the idea that simply walking has any kind of like subconscious societal like evaluation is kind of a mind blower, you know, because it's like, wow, no one has ever sat down and had a conversation about like you know, what humans in American society should think or feel when they see someone walking with a backpack and maybe close to a well-known trail that's renowned for difficulty and length, you know? It's a narrative, it's a story, it's a fiction. It's cool. Let's see. Okay. I think I wanted to make a distinction because I listened back to my clip yesterday, and in the same breath, I was saying that like companies like Instagram and Facebook are manipulating people, and then in the next breath, I was like, you can't manipulate anybody in reality. And for my own sake, just keeping the books clean and stuff, I just wanted to say that like companies, it's about scale, right? Like, I actually don't think in a meaningful way that, you know, at scale, if you have one person, they cannot meaningfully like manipulate the behavior or the beliefs or the thoughts of that person just because, you know, you're basically like, you're a discrete quantity, you know? Like, you can certainly do certain things to modify their behavior, but you can't do it and make them think that they're like doing it themselves. There's nothing subtle about human to human, one-on-one manipulation. You can see the actors and the victims, and like, it's like, you know, it's I don't know, it's embodied. Because it's embodied, it's also just one. But then you take something like Instagram, and Instagram is like, the scale of it is like almost infinite compared to the small effect that one single person can have against another person. It's like, if like, you know, an infinite number of faceless people were trying to simultaneously influence you to do something through mechanisms that you weren't aware of, that had also been tailored to your exact desires. You know what I'm saying? It's simple math. Like, you know, I can't even imagine, I was just too young, but like the .com era of the internet, like when everything, stores started going online, you know, like that must have just felt like such a moment, you know, a moment in tech. Like you look at the humble beginnings of Amazon, and it's just like, wow, that's quite a story. That kind of makes Carnegie and all these other like historical monopolistic fat cats, kind of makes them look like poor people, like comparatively, you know. I mean, what? Amazon, who even knows how much it's worth, but you know, it has enough money to go everywhere that Tesla kind of is, you know. trying for interplanetary travel and space exploration, all that kind of stuff. It's wild. Anyway, so, humans can be made to do things. But again, it's more insidious than that, because it's like the way social media manipulation occurs is that it makes you feel like you have a choice in the matter, which I suppose, technically speaking, you do. But if you're being primed with certain kind of content that's designed to make you have a certain kind of reaction and then push you to a product, it's like, it's strictly Pavlovian, my dude. Like, it's the algorithms, the way that they work, they can't even, I bet at this point they're so well refined that they look unbelievably simplistic. Like maybe, I only know JavaScript, so it doesn't mean anything for me to say only a couple of hundreds of lines of code. I don't know, as you move up the hierarchy, I don't know how much more efficient you can get. My assumption with the little I know about computing languages is that, yes, indeed, they do get quite a bit more advanced and specific and efficient, especially as compared to JavaScript. I kind of feel like, here's the metaphor that I see. My understanding of code is to an amateur stick and poke tattoo artist as like a professional coder is to a professional studio owning, electric machine using 20-year veteran of the art, So I don't even know what I don't even know, but I do know that MailChimp, it didn't run on JavaScript, and there's a part of me using JavaScript, I can kind of intuitively feel why, because like JavaScript is relatively simple, but in my experience anyway, it was difficult to make things happen in a sequential way. Like, by the end of my time at MailChimp, I had made a bunch of little tools that would do things for me. And like a big part of the process of, figuring out how these things would work was like literally breaking down order of operations, and also, in a sense, needing to time it so that I could tell the computer, it's like, I want you to do this step, then I want you to wait 2 seconds, then I want you to do this step, but if you find this data that contains this word on this step, I want you to not think, like, don't process it, ignore it, that kind of stuff, like, complex if-then statements. But you had to time it all right, and, by and large, most of the time, if I made it too complicated and couldn't debug it, it just wouldn't work, Like, JavaScript to me felt brittle. I'm an amateur. I only used it at a very, insignificant level, and only for maybe a year or so. I couldn't write you a single line. You give me a piece of paper. I, especially now, haven't even done it in 8 months, something like that. Sounds about right. 9 months, not sure. But yeah, why am I talking about this? Oh, yeah, the Instagram algorithm. Yeah, I gotta think, especially with AI refining things, like if you looked at whatever that algorithm is written in, and I'm sure it's not quite as simple as it being a single algorithm, but maybe it is. I bet it looks pretty streamlined, much more streamlined than the types of tools I was making with JavaScript. Low bar. What else? Okay. Well, I guess I was listening to this episode recently of Joe Rogan with Duncan Trussell. Pretty interesting episode, but then kind of started going off the rails and talking about a lot of stuff I don't really care about, which is fair. I'm just eavesdropping on their conversation. They're not actually there to entertain me, let alone inform me. But Duncan Trussell has fallen deep into the AI rabbit hole, which, pleased me to no end, and I expected as much. I have to be honest, when I saw that episode was posted, one of my first thoughts was like, oh, I bet Duncan's going to talk about AI. And so listening to him talk about AI, I was like, yeah, dude, like, you're at the same level that I am with like using this stuff. Like, your competency is just enough because you've been plugged into the tech world as a consumer to understand like what these things can do and how you can make them do it. And so listening to him talk about using OpenClaw and a Mac Mini to train a GPT chatbot based on the writings of Charles Manson had me in stitches, my dude. Can you imagine? It was hilarious. I was like, dude, Duncan, you're the best, my dude. Like, thanks for having fun. Thanks for taking some of the horror and turning its frown upside down. Like, 'cause, can you imagine? Your typical experience with a chatbot. It's trained to be a human helper. On the back end, there's actually a prompt that gets included every single time you submit something, which is like a basic reminder to the AI that it's supposed to be a helper and that it's supposed to be harmless to the human being. Every single prompt has that subtext attached to it, and that's why there's also something now called prompt injection, where people will try to break these chat models so that you can have them disregard that background prompt, and then they start talking about some crazy stuff. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, Duncan Trussell's talking about all this stuff, and I'm like, way to go, Duncan. Thanks for being interested in something interesting. But then they start talking about like meme culture, and Duncan had an interesting thought where he was like, because of the way humans share information now, like, GIFs, sending memes, like, not that that's a huge, like, part of our communication, but it is like something that people do. And people, they'll even exchange whole like personal life experiences, and they'll like refer to a meme to describe it. Like, someone will be like, yeah, I had this kind of a day. It's kind of like that meme where like, the dude falls with the hot dog, and then everyone's like, oh, and I'm just like, no, I don't know. Anyway, that's not my point. My point is that Duncan Trussell was like, because we do have this communicative style, like, how do we even know when our own last original thought was? Like, because, saliency and priming and like picking simple pictographic ways to express emotion, like, it starts to inform your interpretation of what those things actually are in your own experience. Like, you associate a certain type of your own happiness with like a scene from Parks and Recreation. It's interesting. or at least I thought so. What else? Yeah, I guess, yeah, these are two good ones. Last two. Oh yeah, okay. This is something that has stuck with me for a while, and there was something that was, something more that was being said than I realized in the moment. Otherwise, I think I would have probably commented on it. But, you know, when I rode my bike to be on Backpacker Radio's podcast, there was this one part of the interview where one of the co-hosts, we're talking about AI, we're talking about the current paradigm of like how capitalism works on like capital and labor both being scarce relative to one another, you know. And I was talking about how I think because of like true abundance, like you won't be able to like distinguish the caste system based on the caste system based on wealth. Like that won't be a metric anymore, because it's just like, what does wealth even mean if like you can basically make anything by plucking atoms out of the atmosphere, you know, like true complete abundance, like, you know, can't fathom it. But in any case, I said something like that, and then Chance was like, well, if there was that kind of abundance, then how would those people know that they're better than us? And, you know, I thought about that for a second. I was kind of, I don't know, there's a video of it. I would be interested in seeing what my face did when she asked that, because I know initially the way that question hit me, I was like, I've never considered that part. Like it was interesting. My take of that specific question was like, it was a question that you would ask if you were only in the midst of believing that money was actually an important distinguisher between people. And I so firmly don't believe that like the idea that people are better than you just because they have more money, like I have never ever thought that was true. Like I feel like there's so many stories in our culture, and then also, you know, to say nothing of reality TV that shows what happens to human beings when they become wealthy, or at least what can happen. It's like, this actually looks like it leads a human being to destruction. If anything, wealth might be something to lament as like a huge responsibility to make sure that you don't destroy your life, you know? Like, if there's nothing you have to say no to, like, that's dangerous with our current mammalian hardware, you know? I think it's probably the same thing that leads to people who win the lottery. What do they say? Like, they usually end up wishing they hadn't, which is wild. But yeah, that question was so intriguing to me, because I was like, like, I'm not sure if those people are getting wealthy in order to feel better about themselves than other people. And I'm not sure if you, like, asking a question like that, are aware of the fact that, like, there's no actual law of reality that says that human worth is increased or decreased by wealth, you know? That's to me, it's actually a dangerous framework, because then you can almost quite literally evaluate a human being's worth based on their bank account. Like, you can say that that's an important metric for determining if, like, they are a good addition to our population or a less good one, you know? Like, I don't know. That thought went through my head. I guess maybe I can't even articulate it as well as I wish I could. But you got to think, to ask a question like that acknowledges that you believe in a certain type of paradigm. And if that's the paradigm you are existing in, that's kind of like the default narrative, which is that, money equals worth. And if you're so deeply entrenched in that type of ideology, then that's actually the reason why you can't perceive of a future where things could be drastically, completely unrecognizably different. You have to lose faith to use your imagination. Like, you have to realize that your most deeply held beliefs are possibly not true, and that reality might arrange itself in such a way that is very at odds with you. And it's nothing personal, but they say it sucks to suck. And so if you're in a place that you really don't like because of the environment and your temperament, like, the only thing you can do is try to affect your reaction to it. I think I'm almost at the top. I recognize this a little bit. Let me take this piece of gum out. I want to zen, my dude. All this talking. All this freaking talking. Yeah, it makes me think. I think it's from Fight Club. I know that the band Evergreen Terrace has an album called Losing All Hope is Freedom. And I'm pretty sure that's what Edward Norton says eventually in the movie. In my mind, I don't even remember. Losing all hope is freedom. Yeah, that's kind of true. Hope. Losing all hope is freedom. Maybe that's not so true. At least in my experience. I think he probably just felt like a badass writing that. I think if you lost all hope, the type of freedom that would provide you, in my belief, sounds a little too nihilistic, I can kind of imagine what that would feel like to operate in, but I don't like it. Dude, I'm not almost at the top. I mean, I am close, but I'm not as close as I thought I was. But I do believe it's all downhill from here. Not that that's any better. That hurts my knees a lot. So, I'll end by talking about, I guess, what my next plans are going to be. So, I think tonight, I don't think. Tonight I'm staying in Waynesboro, and I'm going to do some logistics once I get in town, but I'm not sure I'll get it all done. So, I might take a zero in Waynesboro tomorrow so that I can actually set up the next sequence of things that I want to happen and feel good, because I'm basically going to need to get a bus from Waynesboro to Charlottesville, and then the Crescent Line goes through Charlottesville. Crescent Line is my favorite. That's the one that goes from Atlanta to New York City. Actually, it goes even farther than that, west anyway, in the south. It goes through Alabama, maybe other it goes to New Orleans. It goes from New Orleans all the way to New York City. Anyway, what am I talking about? Yeah, get a bus, Charlottesville, take an Amtrak from Charlottesville, go to Toccoa, which I just love. Like, I can't, if you ask me, like, hey, like, we have this Amtrak line going through sort of northeast Georgia, like, can you tell us a good place to make a stop? Like, I would never, ever even think, I wouldn't even know Toccoa existed as a place if I didn't live somewhat close to it, you know? And the fact that there's an Amtrak stop there, I'm just like, dude, this place, whatever it was in the past, it is definitely not that anymore. And the transformation is so amazingly complete that it almost just seems more likely that Amtrak made a mistake putting a stop there. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, get an Amtrak to Toccoa, and then maybe walk back to my parents' house. I haven't decided. I wouldn't mind walking like 2 20-mile days, camp in some random spot in between Toccoa and Clayton, and then walk back in like the prodigal son, ready for his fattened calf, my dude, and a big old beer. But anyway, yeah, my thoughts still remain the same. I want to stop doing this. I want to return to my parents' house. I want to outfit my car. Specifically, I want to make a very, very simple sleeping platform in the back that's diagonal so I can actually fit. And I want to be able to sleep in the back of my car. I feel like if I can do that, it completely changes the game and the toolkit that I have access to. Because, you know, it's basically a mobile home at that point for me. And I know that I would be quite comfortable and quite happy sleeping back there. I did it once with my dad, or not with my dad, but I did it once while my dad, shout out to my dad by the way, he was getting shoulder replacement surgery, and I had never tried it before, but we, my mom and I both went with him, and like we got there so early in the morning, and he got taken in pretty quickly, and so it was still not even light yet. This is back at like into January, I think. Yeah, January 30th, is that right? Anyway, it was like 6 a.m. or something, and I was tired, and so I was like, I'm just gonna go try to sleep in the back of my car. I had my bike with me, and so my seats were down, and I found out, hey, if I lie diagonally, it's not really comfortable, but I fit, you know? I could make it comfortable, and I will. So, you know, I want to have a bare minimum setup in my car, really just sleeping area, a small cooking like stove, my pan, like I could be fully mobile, you know, and that makes a difference, you know, like being able to put extra clothes. Like the idea right now of extra clothes sounds like such a luxury. Like I wouldn't have any extra clothes. Like, are you serious? Like something that weighs 1/4 pound that I don't do anything with most of the time? No, that is a fate worse than death, my dude. So yeah, I think I might actually go first to Texas since it's along the way and check out Austin for a little bit. Try to get a job at Tesla for a week or so, maybe. I don't know. It depends on the weather. And then failing that, continue heading over to California and giving it another go. Maybe I could have someone mail me Zen from the East Coast. I'll pay you. If I'd be saving hundreds of dollars a day to not buy any nicotine in California. So, yeah, that's the broad strokes of the plan, my dude. I do feel good about it. You know, God, I'm at Reedsfield Gap, 2,637 feet, crest of the Blue Ridge. Man, and now I get to go all the way back down. Gotta love how these people built these roads. I don't know. I mean, I suppose this is probably like one of the more reasonable like gaps in the mountain. Otherwise, I'm sure surveyors wouldn't put it here unless they absolutely had to. But for sure, this is not like a useful, it would not be an easy road to build, but I guess it would be easier than other options. So yeah, dude. Oh, I'm passing a sign. Waynesboro 12 miles. I guess you just stay on this road the whole time. Fine by me, my dude. We got 2 miles of descent. We can pop a Zen in. Maybe there's service up here. So I can try to get this notebook LM going on. So I'll take a picture of me in front of this sign. And hey, you know what? Thanks for listening. Shout out to my parents. Love you, bye.